Hey everyone, welcome back to another Exo Heroes video. Today we're going to be covering FC Tantalo's Core Reverse. There's a fair amount of discussion going on about how the new passives work and what these changes mean for the meta, and those are some of the topics we'll be covering in this video. So without further ado, let's get started. First off, what are the changes? So FC Tantalo is part of the Banga family FC line, and they all have Heart Strike, which makes them all pretty good, and in our opinion, FC Tantalo was already the best at solo proccing Heart Strike, so we already held him in pretty high regard. But now he has two additional passives, the first being Overpower, which is an overtime effect that decreases critical damage of the target by 300%, and then we have Sworn Friend, which grants damage immunity one time when an ally takes critical hit damage. Now, in typical Exo Heroes fashion, I know you've probably read these descriptions, and maybe you're not exactly sure what they do still, or how exactly they work. And to be honest, we're not entirely sure either, but we do have a couple of ideas. So, what do these changes do? Right now, there's a couple of theories about how exactly Overpower works. Our current understanding is that Overpower completely negates the crit multiplier on an attack. So let's say you get crit. Instead of taking the bonus 50% or more critical damage, you'll only get hit by the base attack without the extra multiplier. Now, this will certainly be the case for almost every hero. The only unit who we could see causing problems here is FC D.Va, with her passive that increases critical damage by double. So while base crit is 150%, with gear you can go beyond that, and with her passive, that would mean over 300% crit damage. Even so, Overpower is going to take a significant edge off FC D.Va's damage. This is before we get into Signature Force, which we'll talk about later. Another important piece to note is that due to the wording of the passive, there's some mystery around exactly how it works. I believe it works team-wide and reduces crit damage taken for Tantalo's entire team, while Hal believes it reduces crit damage taken for only Tantalo himself. Now, we've both run tests independently and can't come to a conclusive result, so if anyone watching has some input or a solid idea of what's going on behind the scenes, we'd love to hear it in the comments. On top of Overpower, you have Sworn Friend, so not only do you not actually take critical damage in most cases, but whoever does happen to get crit gains damage immunity once, and this happens every time an ally gets crit, which makes Tantalo a huge counter to heavy AoE crit teams. So why these changes? For those of you who have been following Exo Heroes PvP for a while and looking at how line games typically balances, you'll probably be able to understand the rationale behind this core reverse. Historically, it's been release something OP, and then release an OP counter, and then release an OP counter to that counter, and so on and so forth. So we're just somewhere in the middle of this cycle, not exactly sure which step. It's clear that the two new passives are meant to shut down crit-centered comps that have been prevalent in the meta, although they're not currently as dominant as they used to be. This is talking about comps mainly revolving around FC Annie supporting either FC Rira or FC D.Va to get off those potentially team-wiping snipes on the first turn. Now, as users and victims of the FC Annie and FC Rira combo ourselves, we totally understand why this needed to be done, but it feels a bit too little too late. What we mean by this is, will these changes really force FC Tantalo into the meta and shake things up? We're hesitantly hopeful. So we mentioned snipe comps falling out of favor, but we do think that D.Va still has a pretty safe spot in those teams, and Rira might be making a comeback as well. The reason for this is Signature Force, or more specifically Elemental Damage. A really quick overview for those who don't know what Elemental Damage is, it's basically additional damage that starts at 4.9k, and this is on top of your base skill that scales off of mana, ignores defense, and can crit through Overpower. Because of this, we've seen clips going around early after the release of Signature Force, where you can watch FC D.Va's just A1 and have elemental damage destroy the enemy team, making the snipe problem even worse than before. The solution to this is Awakening, and the brand new R1 gear, to make yourself tanky enough to survive the damage. But just like Signature Force, Awakening and full sets of R1 are going to be a far reach for most players, especially considering how full sets of R1 gear are not currently available in the game. We only have R1 helmets, armor, and I believe with the latest patch, boots and gloves. So we're still missing two pieces, and this should be enough to survive elemental damage, but again, we're going to see Signature Force scale as we see the new R1 gear scale as well, so we'll just have to see how that pans out in the future. Eventually, once Greenland's Signature Force opens, we're going to start seeing FC Reras do similar things to what FC Diva does now. So Tantalo is more of a temporary workaround to keep FC Rera down, but we see her making a resurgence. This is unless the elemental damage from Bathory's Signature Force, because its ice element gets blocked by Summer's Blessing, in which case Summer's Blessing would just be even stronger than it is currently, but we'll have to see. Ultimately, we imagine things playing out like this. FC Tantalo is going to be good at shutting down snipe comps that don't have Signature Force right now. The ones that do will continue to dominate until more people start getting awakened in R1 characters. Then we might start seeing it come full circle with FC Tantalo enabling tanky comps and the birth of a new meta. So what should you do if you have him? If you already have FC Tantalo, just slap the best gear that you have on him and let him buff, debuff, and heartstrike for your team. Our current impression is that he works best with the tanky team that could help keep him alive while letting heartstrike do all the DPS work. Or if you have Signature Force, even better. As far as the stone sets for Awakening, red stones are always a solid choice for the straight HP and probably the best choice here. Being a tank, Tantalo doesn't really need hit or dodge. Defense is nice, but he doesn't have any defense scaling abilities, so raw HP is going to be generally more useful. Our current recommended comp is Tantalo plus 4 supports, FC Iris, FC or base Garf, Dorka, and then FC Shufrak. Now, with this team, it might look like you're kind of lacking in damage, but Garf and FC Shufrak can actually do a chunky amount, especially with Signature Force. And of course you have Tantalo for the Heartstrike, so it's actually a pretty high damage team. Now, the question most of you are probably asking, should I pull? If you're aiming for or playing at the highest tier PvP, you probably already have FC Tantalo, so it's up to you if you want to just get another one and transcend him. If you don't have him yet, then yes, you should pull. For all other players, FC Tantalo is definitely still a strong unit, and this buff just made him even more so. Although the focus on crit defense isn't as useful in PvE, FC Tantalo's AoE dot and buffs debuffs make him a solid pick for a lot of content, especially Chapter 11. If you don't have any of the Banga family line, then Tantalo might still be a good idea because in our opinion, as we mentioned earlier, he is the best at stacking Heartstrike by himself, and potentially the best in the FC family in general. Ultimately, if you have long-term aspirations that involve Awakening and R1 gear, then yes, you should pull. If you're not as interested in elite PvP and you play a little bit more casually, then we don't think Tantalo is a significant game changer for you, so you might be better off saving that zest for gold FC Genii on the horizon. That does it for us this video. We hope you enjoyed and found it informative. If so, please do leave a like and subscribe. We have more Exo Heroes content on the way, so please keep a lookout for that. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace.